No, Mikel Arteta is not just copying Pep Guardiola. And surely the wins at Villa Park, the win at Tottenham Hotspur, and actually how we've played in 2024, our away form, our defensive resilience, only proves that further. Pep Guardiola has built many a great side who've picked up some fantastic away results, but they don't do it in that manner. It's very different how Arteta approaches these big games with or without injuries. So in this video, I want to talk about the inspirations, because there's multiple managers who have played a part in Mikel Arteta's development as a coach and where I think he gets his ideas from. Of course, this is all just guesswork, but I've got a little bit of evidence to prove it all. Now, of course, everyone talks about Pep Guardiola as the main source of inspiration, and I think that's fair enough. That's the only manager in this list he's actually worked with from a coaching perspective, whose brains he's been able to pick for ideas and actually probably work with in terms of game plans. And I think the one thing that absolutely is a parallel between Man City and Arsenal, it's the positional play. It's the way that Arsenal, whether in a 4-3-3, whatever shape they're in, will make sure to split the wingers. They go really high up the pitch, hugging the touchline. They will get an inverted fullback in there, and they'll do something to ensure that they're dominating key areas of the pitch, and there's constant triangles, and that the main zones for build-up and attack are all covered, stretching the back four. That's the kind of thing that I think you can see in that early days from Man City, and actually Pep Guardiola's teams with Bayern Munich and Barcelona did the same. Arteta clearly buys into the positional play aspect, and actually we've got a little bit of evidence that in terms of the sort of 3-5 build-up that Arteta's gone with by inverting Zinchenko and, making sure to get that extra player in midfield. This is something that Guardiola was actually attempting to do all the way back in 2016 in his first season at Man City. When you look at this 11 against Southampton, this 11 went out as a 3-4-3. I mean, you look at it on paper, that's what it is. But again, if I just get you to imagine Sane and Sterling pushed up that little bit higher up the pitch, De Bruyne and David Silva tucked in a touch, what have you got? I mean, you've basically got Man City's system, an Arsenal system, the 3-2-5. You've got your back three of Stones, Company, Kolarov and build-up. You've got the two sort of sixes in Fernandinho and Gundogan to receive in the first phase of build-up. And then you've got Sane and Sterling holding the touchline with your 10s in De Bruyne and Silva picking up the space behind Aguero. So while at the time, Arteta, Guardiola, Man City, they didn't quite know how to, because they ended up actually ditching this plan and moving more to a 2-3-5. But you can see there from the 11 they tried to go with Sane and Sterling as wing-backs. That was what clearly they thought was their solution to having a good defensive shape, but also ending up in that shape and build up in some way. Arteta's answered it by inverting Zinchenko. Guardiola's answered it by, getting Stones to step into midfield. So they found other ways, but that was a very early version of how Guardiola, with Arteta by his side, tried to deploy that system. What I won't give Guardiola credit for, though, and I really think this is an Arteta thing that gets overlooked massively, is the 4 centre-backs in a back 4 system that both managers are really credited with doing well over the last year. Now, if I just show you this 11 from Mikel Arteta as Arsenal faced Liverpool in a 3-2 win, Tomiyasu, right-footed centre-back, 6'2", was playing left-back in the game. He predominantly played right-back before. But why was this a big decision at the time? Because at the end of 2022, we were maybe, 10 games into the season, whatever, facing Liverpool. Tomiyasu was the preferred option in this game when Kieran Tierney was on the bench. And at the time, Kieran Tierney was getting minutes in the absence of Zinchenko, so the inclusion of Tomiyasu was a big deal. He didn't just play in this one game to stop Salah, he then actually played quite a lot of football at left back that season, and that was really interesting because it told us that actually, in terms of sustaining a press and ensuring that he had the most physical profiles he could at the back to do the defensive duties they needed to do to ensure a high line, to defend in a low block well, he wanted players of that profile, and that's why the likes of Zinchenko slightly been phased out a little bit over the last year, and Kieran Tierney simply doesn't play in this team anymore because of maybe a technical level that's needed. But Arteta was doing that very early on. Now let me just show you fullbacks that City signed before January 2023, and I'll tell you why that date is important in a second. Because look at the players here. They're all predominantly attacking players, aren't they? They are players that want to get up the pitch. They are players that are creative. The likes of Kyle Walker certainly was when Man City signed him. João Cancelo was a creative outlet, but João Cancelo ended up leaving for Bayern Munich at the end of January 2023 because he'd been phased out, and the likes of Nathan Ake was getting the minutes at left back. Akanji was too. Sometimes at right back Akanji was playing, and suddenly Guardiola was adopting this system a little bit more. So yes, the whole 4 centre-backs thing is definitely something that Guardiola does, but I really think Arteta was the first to really hammer it home. He tried to sign Lisandro Martinez. Arteta had this in his mind from summer 2022, and this is his way with Ben White right back and the profiles we've signed since, like Kivior, like Calafiori, like Timber. This is absolutely something Arteta has been desperate to get into his back for a while. So all credit to Arteta for that. Let's go on to the next manager. Let's talk about David Moyes, because David Moyes, I think, it's so hard to look back and find data from pre-2013 when David Moyes was at Everton. So let me tell you what I remember off the top of my head, and maybe you can help me in the comment section below. Everton were really good in the air, the likes of Tim Cahill, the likes of Marouane Fellaini. I did find some data that had their rankings in the Premier League in terms of, how good they were for aerial duels won. And as you could see, ranking 4th in his final season at Everton, 5th the season before that, and the season before that, 12th and 9th. So never bad in terms of aerial duels won, but in his last 2 seasons, with the likes of, like I said, Fellaini and others, Jelavic and a few other players, they were a good outfit in the air. And I do think Arteta, when you look at how long and how often we go along with David Raya to a Kai Havertz and how effective we've been on set pieces, I think this is something, when I think back to Leighton Baines whipping it into the box and how difficult and how physical Everton always were at Goodison Park, what a difficult place it was to go to, I do think Arteta has taken some inspiration from the physicality of Everton's sides back then, but also their effectiveness from crossing, high balls, long balls, and just getting it into the box, and having physical presences to make it really difficult for the opposition. And I do think there's some David Moyes influence there for sure. But let's go on to this next one. It's Diego Simeone. And I know you're probably all thinking, Diego Simeone, the Atletico Madrid manager, when have they ever worked together, him and Mikel? And the answer is he hasn't. But 2 people have. Let me show you this. Miguel Molina was the assistant manager at Atletico Madrid, or an assistant manager, between July the 1st, 2017 to August 27th, 2020. So he joined 6-7 months into Mikel Arteta's, actually a bit longer, 8 months into Mikel Arteta's time as manager. So he had been working with Diego Simeone, been part of Diego Simeone's staff. And Carlos Cuesta, now 29, also had got 4 years from the ages of around 19 to 23, working with Atletico Madrid under 17s. Of course, by this point, like Atletico Madrid, 2014, were probably at the peak of their powers under Diego Simeone, and he got to see a lot of, or I imagine would have got to see a lot of what the culture was like at Atletico Madrid. And I wonder if conversations have been had between Mikel and his coaching staff, and Miguel Molina and Carlos Cuesta. What were the conversations around the shapes, the systems, the movement? Because you look at Arsenal's fluidity out of possession, not just in possession, but out of possession, the way Ben White can go and track a Heung-min Son so that Bukayo Saka can then follow Udogie when he makes that underlap, the way, Partey can go fill in the gap, or Havertz can go press onto that man and Saka can cover out wide so we can get a tighter back four. All these things are principles that really feel like Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid. That willingness and that, what's that word? That they enjoy suffering. They're happy to do it. They take real pride out of it. The clean sheets, how difficult they are to break down. I bet Diego Simeone loves watching this Arsenal side. I honestly reckon he's in awe of it, because the system out of possession is absolutely flawless. And I think a lot of inspiration is taken from the work he's done at Atletico Madrid. And we have 2 coaches that might be giving Arteta some insight into how that's done. Now, the final manager is, of course, Arsene Wenger, the last manager that Mikel Arteta worked with as a player. Now, I think if we're to describe, Wenger's football and where the inspiration probably came from, I think the word you're talking about is fluidity. That is the kind of football Arsenal played, that the 1-2s, the quick combinations, everyone sort of play ever. It was total football, right? Now, the actual terminology that is used in the game is positionism and relationism. Now, I've got here a description via Google AI saying that, and let me just take you to this exact quote here, the highlighted bit. In terms of position, it's described as players occupying specific zones to optimize passing and exploit space. I think what that means is it's letting the positions and the system dictate how you problem solve and dictate your approach to the game, and dictating how you're going to deal with certain things. Trust in the system, trust in the positions, trust in the combinations that have been worked on, trust in the coaching, and you will find solutions. Relationism is slightly different, and we're highlighting this key word here. The relationism encourages players to attack more spontaneously, allowing their actions to dictate how the team attacks space. Relationism is about basically saying, you lot figure it out. You've got the talent, and I'm going to trust you all with your instinct to understand what needs to be done on the pitch to problem solve. That might mean 5-6 players all coming over to the right hand side and congesting an area, but trusting your ability in tight spaces, your close control, your awareness, your vision, your understanding of your surroundings to find a way out of a problem, play your way out, and open up the pitch again. It's different approaches, and the reality is that every manager will adopt a little bit of one and a little bit of the other. But I do think that Mikel Arteta, when you look at Arsenal and their free-flowing best, when they're playing against sides where they're perhaps expected to be really dominant, Ødegaard will float a little bit. Saka will get in the pockets of Ben White, can overlap. I do think that there is an understanding there. Look at Ødegaard Saka and White. Yes, footballers go on a pitch and they have to figure out themselves, but there is a fluidity and a movement about them that suggests you lot figure it out. Havertz might come over, Partey or Jorginho might come over and help a little bit too. And I do think that when Arsenal are in their free-flowing best, we actually look a lot more like Arsene Wenger's football in 2007 to 2010 than we probably do Man City's football at their best right now, which is still brilliant to watch, but is just a different way of attacking. And I think Arteta or Wenger's Arsenal had a real kind of give and go nature about them that I think Arteta does want to deploy in his team today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Those are the 4 managers that I feel are making Mikel Arteta the manager he is today, and I think he's having tremendous success by plucking from what he's learnt from all these managers and ultimately being inspired. That's what managers will do. No one is inventing anything new today that wasn't an inspiration or a building on someone else's work. Mikel Arteta is not some copycat manager. He's taking the best of what he's learned, he's adding his twist, his spin, and he's innovating some things as well. And it's creating an Arsenal side that, without having Erling Haaland, without having Kevin De Bruyne or Pep Guardiola as manager, might just have something different that could get Arsenal that Premier League title.